Please welcome CEO of Portoro, Dustin Abney, and co-founder and CEO of Evolve, Brian Egan, in conversation with Skift Head of Research, Seth Borko.
Really excited about this session. We have two amazing panelists, both of whom have built careers as operators on the front lines. We've got Brian, one of the largest managers in the country, and maybe in the world even. Dustin, you've done a more bespoke, but still branded and really incredible short-term rental business. So really excited to have you both here.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
I'll remind the audience again, we are taking questions. Please submit your Q&A for the session, and we'll do our best to include them in the conversation. So, all right, I gotta ask you, just jumping right into it. Are you okay to do that?
Let's do it.
So you're both branded property managers. You've built a brand, you have a name. Evolve means something to your customers. Portoro means something to your customers. One of the big questions for me is is that dream of building branded property management and short-term rental dead? We've seen companies struggle with it. Brian, I'll ask you both. We'll start with you, Brian. I think I know your answer, but is it dead?
Is my laugh giving it away? No, I certainly don't think it's dead. I understand why you're asking the question. I'm sure we'll get into all of this. But I think that the dream and really the strategic chessboard kind of remains exactly the same. To me, if you walk up to anyone on the street outside and you ask them to name three airlines, they're going to say United, American, and Delta. They're not going to say Booking.com, Expedia, and Hotel.com, right?
Yeah.
And in short-term rental, I think that opportunity remains. That yes, everyone knows Vrbo, everyone knows Airbnb certainly is the verb and the noun and all the rest. But I think that the opportunity to have a branded hospitality and management company that means something to owners and to guests still remains exactly the same.
Why has it been so hard to achieve that?
I think there's two things. One, I think that in our category, it's important to remember that essentially the distribution came first. So in the hotel world, everyone knew Marriott and Hilton long before you could book any of them on the internet or before there was an internet. And so I think it's important to remember the sequencing here. That said, a lot of people, the number one concern amongst any guest in the short-term rental industry is trust. Yeah. And what do I know what I'm going to get? So I think that there's still a huge opportunity to fill that gap. The second reason is that scale is hard in this industry, which I'm sure we're going to explore. Yeah. But look, we got 35,000 properties across the U.S. That makes us, to your earlier point, one of the top, I think, 3, 4, 5 largest in the world, and that's 35,000 properties out of millions of vacation properties around the U.S. and more than that across the world. So I think that there's a long way to go. I think the dream is very much alive. I just think it's going to be a multi-decade journey on building all these out.
As a history nerd, I love the appeal to this is the
we're just early in the arc of history.
That's
here.
Right. That's right. The long arc of history bends towards branded rentals. Dustin, how do you think about building Portoro as a brand? What was going through your head? You're coming into the space, you're building a brand. It's a little more bespoke. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say first, I think the dream of branded is not dead. I think the approach to brand is yet to be seen, which works the best or who's going to win in the branded approach. So the way that we think about it is first and foremost trust, right? We believe in creating a brand that our consumers, our guests, our homeowners, or whoever we're interacting with has a sense of what our standards are. Mm-hmm. Trust and transparency, communication, all of those things. So that's the most important thing. Then you start to get into layers deeper, experiences in the home. How far do you go? We standardize things like, technology inside the home, sheets, bath products. But we can't force owners to have the same bed or, the same artwork. So you can only go so far in our world, as we all know. So that's one part of it. The way that we think about it is we want to create trust and transparency and all those standards. Our approach to it is very specific. We acquire property management companies to enter markets. There is, some brand loyalty for those local property managers. There's great local property managers, so we're more of a brand of brands. Over time, that may change because when we enter a new market, people don't particularly know who Portoro is when we go into a new market. So we're trying to use that local brand. We co-brand most of our property management companies by Portoro, so it's a vacation rental company by Portoro. So they get to know us, they get to know the standards, and over time we will, start to sunset those and just have one single brand of Portoro.
I assume proof is in the pudding. Assume that's working for you.
Yes, it's working very well.
And are you able to drive direct bookings, or are you reliant on the third party platforms?
Yeah, so we are. We have about 40% direct bookings right now. Most of that is driven because we maintain those local websites, right? So people still land on the websites that they're used to going to if they book, Volano Beach, Florida, which is one of our markets. But when they actually find the property they like, they go to Portoro.com. So they click the property, they actually go up to our booking process, which is standardized across all of our properties. So yes, it's definitely working.
So the topic of this conversation, which we don't always have to stick to, but is balancing tech with tradition. And you were just talking about operating and the technology. How do we think about technology when it comes to unlocking scale and unlocking those first-party branded, propositions? I'm going to start asking you this, Brian. How important is tech to you achieving the scale that you have today?
Oh, it's critical. I think, first of all, I don't know any business that can scale without technology these days. And I think really it's a broad term, right? When I think about technology in our business, there's really kind of three layers. There's the foundational layer. And really, I think this is what we've spent the last decade on as an industry. This is the basics of distribution, pricing, making sure that home is showing up on all the right channels, including at evolve.com, with the right pricing, with all the right amenities, with the photos in the right order, and all these, it's not the sexy stuff, but it is absolutely critical. And let's be clear, like when we started the business over 10 years ago, none of that existed, right? We're making hundreds of millions of rate changes a year, 30,000 plus rate changes a year per property. And it used to be that we had to log into an extranet and manually change prices on VRBO, right? That was when we started the business. So there's foundational tech, and I think that's largely coming. There's operational tech, which is the internal systems and tools and interfaces that our team uses to support our owners and our guests. And then there's really experiential, which is what gets most of the ink, but is actually, I think, kind of really only the top layer. And I think we're kind of just exploring that. That's more what the owners and guests are interfacing with every day.
But some of your peers have struggled to grow profitably. The idea was that technology was going to let them grow profitably. Did that let them down? Is that not true?
Well, it's not true if what you're technology scales very nicely.
Yeah.
I would say it's not going to help with profitability if you're in a business that is incredibly operationally intensive and or capital intensive.
Yeah.
If you have to buy properties, master lease properties, buy furniture, fixtures, and equipment, employ thousands of housekeepers, tech isn't going to solve those problems. If what you're doing with technology are the things that technology does well and scales, then great. That will allow you to become profitable, and we are a profitable business.
And in the short, just to follow up, I'm going to you second, Dustin. That point you just said, if you're using technology in the places where it works best, what do you think are the places where it works best in short-term rentals?
Well, I think it works really well in terms of, again, go back to the layers I just said. Foundational, operational, experiential for your owners and guests, but it's not going to vacuum a rug.
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, that was something that Carl said earlier today one of the first sessions. He said, the boots on the ground doesn't scale. I talked to a lot of tech providers that talk about housekeeping tech.
Yes.
Is there scale advantages there in housekeeping? What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, I would say that it does scale.
It does scale.
The tools that you use to enable cleaners in markets, or having a deep bench, or getting things cleaned in the right order on checkouts, it absolutely does scale. But as Brian said, you can't use tech to clean rugs, to clean toilets. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, Carl and I agree on this, and we've known each other a long time. Yeah, that is why at Evolve we partner with local service providers for housekeeping, light maintenance, things like snow removal, from the drop. And really the name of the company is based on the idea that we said, look, there is delivery of on-site services that is manual labor. There is delivery of rental income and broader management and the ability to interact with all the guests, distribution, pricing, and all the rest. This one's very scalable, very tech and data driven. This one is ultimately the delivery of a local service. And we believe that those are critical elements of the value proposition and of the industry. But we're going to leave that to the locals, and we're going to partner with them, put guardrails around that, and ensure that they're getting the job done the right way and that we're providing great owner and guest experiences. By the way, what I just said is exactly what all the major hotel brands have figured out. Right? Marriott doesn't own those buildings, and they don't employ most of the people pushing the housekeeping carts down the hallways, and for all these reasons. And they have the advantage of a 200-key building with 3 room formats. Imagine what you're doing with 35,000 properties where each one is unique, n equals 1. It's just not, there's no way to apply enough tech to figure out how to clean 35,000 kitchens that are totally unique.
Yeah. I want to talk a little about maybe some of the touches that make it unique. And we'll start with you. I'm going to ask you both the same question. I'll start with you, Dustin. Is there such a thing as too much technology? Do you lose that human element? Do you think your customers want the human element?
I don't think it's necessarily about losing a human element. I think it's about meeting guests or consumers where they want to be. So, for example, everybody wants to develop an app and force guests to download their app. Well, consumers don't really give a shit, to be honest with you, right? They want to communicate through text, and they just want, a link to pop up and click on it and get house rules and things like that. So I think there's use cases where, yes, too much tech or forcing guests or consumers down a path they don't want to go down is damaging. So I think there are touch points that make it, a really great experience. Like, think of the turnkey app in the home. You can, request service and different things like that. I think that enhances the experience. But forcing somebody to use technology for technology's sake or for your own benefit as a brand, I think is damaging, in my opinion.
I like that point too. Yesterday we were talking a lot about tech, and someone said that changing consumer behavior is very expensive.
Absolutely.
And so it's better to build technology that meets with the consumer where they are. I like that point a lot. What do you think, you, Brian? Is there such a thing as too much tech?
No, I'm largely aligned with what Dustin was saying. I think hospitality is about how you make someone feel. Ultimately, we're in New York. I'll quote or try to quote, I'll paraphrase Danny Meyer, my favorite hospitality thinker, who says it's about making people feel as though what you're doing with them is with them, not kind of to them or at them. And so if I'm forcing you to download an app or if I'm forcing you down a certain tech path, that's all to you, at you. We want this to be about with you. Our mission is to make vacation rental easy for everyone. We just want it to be easy. And for a lot of people, that's going to mean SMS, and for other people, it's going to mean an app, and for other people, it's going to be calling one of our teammates, and we're happy to meet them where they are.
I want to ask a question. I'm going to paraphrase. Great, nice. I like Danny Meyer too. He's a really smart guy.
Set on the table. Great book.
Paraphrase one of these audience questions. Do you have any data on how often consumers see your listings on Airbnb, Vrbo, then go to Evolve, Portoro websites directly? So this ties into you saying there's distribution technology. We know you're not spending all of your day typing into the Vrbo, booking website. When you work with these channels and you use technology to work with the channels, how often are you able to actually capture that traffic back to your website? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't have any data that I can cite here and now. We know that some consumers are going to shop around. Some consumers are going to, we've seen everything from taking the headline and putting that in the search bar to Google image searches, et cetera. And a lot of times what consumers are looking for and potential guests are looking for is just to, one, validate that this is a real home, that it actually exists, that it's described the same way in all of these different places. That's a really important trust signal. And then ultimately, once they conclude that this is a trustworthy transaction, they want the best price. And for us, the best price is going to be on evolve.com. But we're not, we also want to say this very clearly, like our distribution partners are partners of ours, and we're not in the business of trying to fork their traffic over. We've got decade-long partnerships with everybody with enough bookings to go around for all.
And what's your relationship like with the platform?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't have too much to add. We don't have data on attribution if somebody discovered a property on Airbnb and then came to Portoro, but we see them as distribution partners. There's a lot of I would say, sentiment around, I say broadly in the property management space to go fully direct, right? And I just don't believe that. I think there's a healthy mix. People are going to shop around. They want to validate. Consumers are pretty savvy these days with Googling, property names and things like that. So, so we see them as a true partner of ours. We like the distribution. We see different scales too. In Austin, Texas, it's primarily Airbnb. I think it takes about 70% of our bookings come through Airbnb. But if you look at Volano Beach, it's probably 60% direct. So it just depends on what market you're in, what consumers, and how they find your property. So,
by the way, I mean, go back to trust, right? If you're a guest, a consumer, everyone here is booked short-term rental. If you are a avid Airbnb user, you've got that app downloaded. I mean, if that's something that you feel loyal to, it's an experience you trust. What erodes trust faster than us saying, you should really not do that and just come back and, let them go back to what we just said. Let the consumer dictate the path. It is expensive to change behavior. It's impossible and a losing bet to try and change behavior in ways that they don't want. Let's just let them go down the path they want.
I want to talk a bit about the homeowner. We often talk about distribution and managers and customers. The homeowner is a really, really important piece of this business. Dustin, what's your relationship like with your homeowners, and how does technology play a role?
I love them all. No,
love them
I'm
all.
kidding.
No favorite children.
That's right. No, I mean, we think about homeowners as our most important asset, second to our employees. And I think our relationship with them is extremely critical. And I saw a question come in, and we don't usually have the first interaction with our homeowner as bringing them on from a prospect all the way. Now, our organic sales and growth is quickly catching up with our inorganic, but we usually get introduced to them through an announcement that, hey, we've acquired the company that you signed on with a decade ago. And so it's very critical for us to take very strategic steps to get to know them, to tell about our brand and who we are and why we chose to enter this market and how we're going to take care of their home. So I think part of that is just relational. It's very capital intensive, very people intensive. We spend a lot of time doing that. But then we try to, basically up the game from what they're used to with technology through a homeowner portal. So I truly believe that homeowners are sort of left on the sidelines most of the time in this industry, and they're left in the dark about what's happening at their property, how it's performing, the outlook of performance, all those types of things. So we built technology and are continuing to improve on a homeowner portal that enables them to have that information and puts them at the forefront, them in the controls of their home, and us as a partner in that. So I think it's critical. I think it's overlooked in this industry. I was talking to another industry vendor about just like homeowner CRM. There's one that doesn't really exist in our industry from a vendor perspective, and it's a huge gap. Nobody's focusing on it, and I think it's core to our technology strategy is the homeowner.
Brian, how does your tech interact with your homeowner?
Well, I mean, our tech is the owner app primarily, or the owner web account, however they'd like to access that, which is critical. It's a critical interface. It's something that we've worked on a lot over the last few years and continue to. I think pulling the scope back a bit, what's really important is start with we view our owners as our partners in this business. And I think that it does get overlooked in this industry, and for too long, I think the industry as a whole started to focus on the mainstreaming on the consumer side of the market. I understand why that happened. And by the way, that was a critical element of the growth of the category. But we all have to remember that these are homes owned by individuals. In most cases, that is the only vacation property they own. Some of them may have 2 or 3 or 4. Very, very few have more than that. And that is the supply base of this industry. And without those owners and without the supply base, we are nowhere. So we never forget that. One thing that I mentioned, I agreed with Carl on something. One thing I disagree with him on is that these companies can't scale above 25,000. I think the key, I heard the line. I wasn't in the session, but I heard the line. But the key here, and I say that kiddingly, the key is you can't think about 35,000. If n equals 35,000 in your operation, you're lost. It has to be n equals 1. That's how the owner is thinking about it. It has to be the fact that this is the second largest asset in their life. It is largely likely the second largest expense structure in their life. And that is a tremendous amount of responsibility as a partner to make sure that they have the rental income necessary to cover those bills.
Are you having any issues with homeowner churn at your size?
Well, I mean, owner churn is a part of our business. I would say currently owner churn is a little higher than it used to be and not as high as it was at its peak at different points when we were iterating through the business model. I think that the basic trend lines there are pretty clear. There was a huge surge of folks who rushed into the industry and panic bought in the pandemic, and also came into a market where there was really a dislocation between supply and demand, which meant that supply was way down, demand was way up. We've now seen that unwind. So of course that's going to lead some people to leave the industry, but churn is something that we feel good about and have a handle on.
Okay. With technology as one of the underlying themes here, I say brand being the other one, but with technology being that AI, those two words we hear a lot about. Is there anything to do for AI for either of your businesses? And you're at very different scales, so I would expect slightly different answers. I'm curious, like how you are both thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, we're thinking about it. We're thinking about how we implement it, but we have no technology around AI today. I think what Marriott Homes and Villas has done with generative AI search is very unique. I think there are certain applications where I think it makes sense, right off the bat, so you don't lose the local hospitality or the personal touch. Whether it's, a guest, we have so many guests that lose their door code, right? That's something very easy, like repeatable things that we can use AI to regenerate and automate. So I think that's the first easiest step. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's to be seen. I mean, the AI is sort of this big space that's accelerating and changing very dramatically. So pricing, algorithms, communication, I think scheduling and routing people on the ground can help us scale and sort of move efficiently through markets. But we don't have anything today AI related.
Yeah, I mean, I would say when we think about AI, just think if you're playing, from a software development game, if you're playing 3 to 5 years down the road, AI just is synonymous with software. Yeah. It's everything that software does in your business is going to be something that AI touches, or it should be, or at least maybe I'll just speak to us. It will be for us, and I think that critically, what AI is doing, I mean, it's doing lots of interesting things for us today, but where the real opportunity space is anywhere that you have structured data, right? That's the big breakthrough here. And so how people code, that's an interesting structured data set and structured language. To Dustin's point, we get lots of repeat questions about things, the way that we craft listing content, et cetera. I mean, AI has an incredible ability to go do something and be wrong 1,000,000 times and get it right once and do it all so fast that nobody knew that that's what happened. And so what we're really focused on is actually go back to my kind of substrates here. We're focused on the foundational layer of the business and making sure that we have our data structured in a way that we can take best advantage of it, because this is something that will benefit those who have scale. We have 35,000 properties. We're going to have over $1 billion of bookings this year. We're 10 years into this business. We have an incredible treasure trove of data. So I think actually AI is something that where the sort of scale begets scale, and it will disproportionately advantage scale players in the space, and we fully plan to take advantage of it.
All right. I want to ask a bit of a blue sky question. It's a bit of a fun one, but when you think about the future of this industry and you think about how you're going to use technology, build trust, what's most excitement for you that's on your pipeline that you're going to do in the next year or two?
For us, I think it's, meeting the guest where they are and where the demands are. So, I think over the past decade, we've seen guests who experience traditional hospitality and they experience STRs, and there's this convergence, right? So it's putting technology inside the home, and we plan to do that and enable concierge services, right? We're in destinations where we have big homes, people want private chefs, they want, cater, they want their fridge stocked when they arrive. So we want to develop a lot of technology around the guest experience and enabling push button magic happens for the guest. And then continue to build the homeowner access so they feel like they're empowered and they're a real partner of ours, not left in the dark, and we have control over their asset. So those are the two big exciting things that we have in the works.
Yeah, for us, I would say it's it's about owners and about their performance on the rental income side, and about helping them to understand how investments in their home, changes that they make to the property, will influence the amount of rental income they can bring in, and or what it looks like to add another property. So think, you're an Evolve owner, you've got your app. If you could say, okay, if I added a hot tub and I doubled the Wi-Fi speed and I did, I put an addition on the house and there was a loft up there, auto-magically, all right, that's another $34,000 a year rental income.
Yeah.
Or, the same idea with an actual purchase of a whole second home. To be clear, we do these things today, and we do them using technology today. But I think that the opportunity is for that to be even more precise, even more automated, and perhaps even on a push basis. So I think that's where I would, I see us going with.
I love to hear it. The dream of the branded professional property manager
Alive
is not
and
dead,
well.
alive and well, and we're
Alive and
driving
well.
forward. Can't wait to
Okay.
see what comes next. Thank you both so much.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.